Yo, man, baby.
Get down! You singing the wrong tune, chop mouth. That's right. You the ones better surrender. You little sawed-off fish-head suckers. That's right. This is your last chance. Or you're all gonna look like leftovers from a razor fight at a chitlin supper.
We are talking about episode 14 of Tour of Duty Season 1, this one, Under Siege. Now, Under Siege is one of the more well-known episodes, at least in the UK, because it was actually released as a movie on VHS, cut together with another episode. So you can actually buy this or rent this VHS out before the actual series aired in the UK, and it kind of was just basically like a, you know, we didn't know back in those days, it was before the internet. So we kind of all thought it was just a kind of a sequel to the other ones that had been released. But anyway, it's an important episode because it does see the death of a regular character, albeit a somewhat underdeveloped one. But nonetheless, it's one of the more action-heavy episodes as well. So the episode really starts with a new captain arriving at Firebase Ladybird. And initially he seems like he might have, you know, kind of got a good grasp about what's going on. Some information that he gets leads to a kind of the destruction of an enemy weapon site. And he seems to get on well with the men, giving them incentive. But his inexperience starts to show through, and he ends up becoming at odds with Anderson and Goldman, as there are some arguments about certain orders. As to who's right, that's actually debatable. I think it's one of the strongest things about this episode is that, you know, it kind of shows both sides in regards to these set of orders that were given and who would have kind of benefited. You know, make your own decisions. Anyway, we are told that essentially the NVA kind of want to move past Firebase Ladybird and ultimately decide to attack it because they do not want to leave a active fire base to the rear of their positions. And ultimately our guys are trapped in this base, heavily kind of outnumbered and under siege from the NVA. So let's discuss Under Siege. Like I said, this is definitely one of the more action heavy episodes. Essentially the second half of this episode is pretty much all one big fight. And I've got to say, it's actually quite thrilling because we do feel there's genuine stake in this film, in this particular episode, because we do feel the odds are so far outnumbered. And I would say the acting in this episode is fantastic. The sense of fear that we get from our regular cast, but they feel like they're going to get overrun. And some of the dialogue is great. And I really liked our new captain. I mean, he's written to be an asshole. But his acting is fantastic, and he kind of, the way he talks to the soldiers, it reminds me of a manager. You know, having worked in management for a long time, this reminds me of the sort of the conversations that you would have from a manager or as a manager to your staff, and the kind of the way you would try and get them on side essentially, and the way you would ultimately manage them. And I thought it was brilliant. And the way his line delivery was absolutely fantastic. Yes, he is kind of meant to be a bit of an asshole, but nonetheless. And I also like the fact that this episode was ambiguous as to who was right and wrong. So there's, you know, we see early on in the episode that Anderson takes a patrol out, and he is given orders to engage the enemy. He doesn't do it because he feels like he's outnumbered ultimately, and kind of goes back before actually ever running into any enemy, and with some intel instead. And then obviously the captain kind of wants him to engage and flush them out. And then there's some dialogue about as to who was right, and it's interesting because you feel like there's arguments to be said for both sides. So even though I feel like the captain is portrayed as a somewhat kind of like very ambitious and kind of maybe selfish person, he does have a point. But also obviously Anderson has the point that, you know, ultimately he's not prepared to sacrifice his men just in a kind of as a cog in the machine, so to speak. So I thought those aspects were fascinating. And then we kind of get to the second half of the episode where we actually have the siege. And like I said, I do feel there's some great, there's some great kind of build up. And it's actually it's got some funny lines in it, this episode, this episode as well. But the build-up is great, and then we can see the firefight. It's all in dark, it's a little bit dark here and there, so you can't really see what's going on sometimes. And obviously that's kind of to hide the number of extras they've got and bits and pieces. But I thought that we're well staged. I mean, we do have spoilers here. The Doc is killed, but he really doesn't have much in the way of characterization before this episode. So although he is credited as a regular cast member, in a lot of the episodes he's never even seen, so you don't feel the loss too badly, to be quite honest with you. Although he actually probably gets the most amount of lines in this very episode that he's ever had in this season. Previously on the UK DVD they actually interview him, and he basically said he was there part-time. He was a part-time cast member, even though he's credited as a series regular up until this point. But yeah, he's kind of underdeveloped, so I don't feel like you really feel the loss that bad. And I don't think his death scene was shot particularly well. It's more or less just kind of fairly anticlimactic, if you want my honest opinion. But there you go. I mean, the ending of this episode as well is fantastic. The end shot where we kind of see the tattered American flag kind of in the wind with the desolation and the kind of the base behind it. What a great shot. I really, really enjoyed this movie. God, I keep calling it the movie. This episode, I thought it was very well. It's one of the best episodes for just kind of like for satisfaction to me, because it really does feel like it's so well acted, has great actions, and it has a few kind of like funny lines of dialogue, especially from Taylor in this episode as well. So, and it's a 9 out of 10 for me. I really like this episode. It's one I can kind of watch over and over. Anyway, have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.